Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining The Brain 202, Editing and Evolving Your Brain. My name is Matt Caton, and I would like to start out by saying that today's class is a bit more advanced than our typical webinars. You can join The Brain 101 any Friday, sign up free on our website at www.thebrain.com. And the Brain 101 really guides you through getting started with the brain, creating new thoughts, adding files and attachments, links to web pages, visualizing relationships between thoughts in a brand new brain from scratch. Today, we're assuming that you already know how to use the brain and probably have a brain installed and have been using for some time. And we're going to talk about how you can clean things up, address areas of your brain that need a bit of attention. Sometimes we call it a bit of gardening. And we're just sort of trimming what doesn't need to be there and finessing the structure of the brain as that particular brain continues to grow and evolve. So a few more advanced features, but again, if you're just a beginner, please stay with us. Still some very relevant information, but also sign up for a Brain 101 so you can understand how we got to this point. Also, I'm demoing today in the Brain 9. You can download the Brain 9 from www.thebrain.com/download. If you are using the Brain 8, there's still some relevant information. The technology is still functions the same, but the Brain 9 has a much stronger database backend, faster, more responsive, and more reliable. So we do encourage you to check out the Brain 9. That's what we're demoing today in. If my brain looks a little bit different than yours, it's probably because you're in the Brain 8. Not to worry, you can also find this webinar or a similar webinar on our website on editing and evolving your version 8 brain as well. That's available on our website. So let's go ahead and jump right in. This first brain that I'm going to be sharing with you is a brain that I've been using for quite some time, and you notice here under my work area, I'm really maintaining and keeping track of my different structures of the marketing team, what's happening with my sales, what's going on in customer service, etc. So I'm really paying a lot of attention to everything going on with my work brain. But my personal life area has been neglected. You know, I drop a lot of different pieces of information, very important pieces of information, into this area of the brain, but I just haven't had the time to really give it any type of structure or map out its relationships. Now, if I were to store all of this information in my on my file and folder system on my Windows machine, yes, you could create a simple folder called My Personal Life, and inside that folder goes everything. All of your documents that have to do with your banking, your favorite recipes, whatever documents you're keeping track of, links to web pages, etc. But of course, we don't do that. We create subdirectories or subfolders. And the brain can be handled that way as well. So we can create some subdirectories. That's one way to actually structure this information in a way that will be much easier and to manage and navigate in the future. And I can continue on tweaking and adding additional information in the future. So this is one of the options you have. I'm going to talk about several different options today, but let's first start by just creating some subdirectories. So I see right at the top I've got an airline rewards, and if I scroll through here, there's urban travel, trains, tropical vacations, sort of in different areas. I've got a lot of information on travel. Travel is important to me, so I'm going to create a new thought called travel. I'm going to activate this thought, and then I'm simply going to relink. I'm going to grab some existing thoughts that are currently showing up in the sibling thought position and move them over so they become a child thought of travel. So I'll grab that snorkeling and diving relates to travel. And now that I've got a child thought, the sibling thought adjusts itself to fit the screen. So I can just simply move the brain down a bit. Airline rewards, that goes under travel. And I'll just scan the list here really quickly. I may miss some and I'll have to come back and add them in later. That's nothing to worry about. Trains, I'm starting to look into train travel. Upcoming trip plans, urban travel, tropical vacations. So quite a few different categories or thoughts fall under that travel category. So I've just cleaned things up a little, grouped them all together so they fall under travel. Again, just one easy click or link away from personal life. Let's try another option or another method. I'm going to create an area for my hobbies. Now in this scenario, I'm just going to leave hobbies on the screen just to show you some of the different ways that you can connect and interconnect thoughts within the brain. Under hobbies, sports, I keep track of Major League Baseball and a lot of different types of sports. I'm going to leave it on the screen. Oh, I grabbed the wrong gate there, so let me just correct that. So I'm grabbing the parent gate off of sports and dragging up to hobbies. So notice while I'm doing this, I still actually have my finger down on the mouse trigger. But you can see that everything else on the screen is grayed out. So I'm really focused here in the brain between the two thoughts that I'm about to link. There's going to be no mistaking if I accidentally click and drag it to home renovations or house repairs. You noticed earlier I clicked on the wrong gate. That can happen. I started dragging a child gate off of retirement. I noticed right away it was wrong. We go down to sports, grab the parent thought, click and drag to connect to hobbies. Now if you notice, sports now falls under both personal life and hobbies. I don't want it falling under personal life anymore. I want that categorized under hobbies. So I just right click on the link between personal life and sports and select to unlink. So again, I'm keeping everything on the screen here in this cluster, and anything that is related to hobbies, house repairs, music, I can just click and drag up to that thought and come back to that thought and unlink the unwanted connections later. So I right click and select unlink from personal life to house repairs and music. Now, I really like the method of dragging things over because that works in this scenario very, very quickly. Sometimes I do want a thought to appear in two different locations, to have two different parent thoughts. That's one of the great things about the brain, is that you can have those type of multiple relationships. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But for this really works to drag and drop. So it just has one link. Let's see what else I have for personal hobbies, insurance, medical. I see a lot of pet information. Maybe I'll create my thought for pets next. And technology. Bring that over as well. I think we're good. Oh, here's what I'm reading now. So that's all about all the books and literature that I'm reading. So I've just taken a moment, scanned those few thoughts, grouped them together under hobbies, and hopefully you can see already that this list, this massive list that was here under personal life, is slowly starting to diminish. I'm going to share a few more tricks with you. Right up at the top, I see my animal adoption link. So I'm going to create my thought for pets now. And I'll activate pets. And let's go ahead and bring one of my pet thoughts over. I see vets at the bottom. I'm not going to connect to that one for a reason. I'm going to grab my pet sitter thought. So I've sort of brought that over, minimized what I can see over on the right in my sibling thought list. And this is what I wanted to share with you. If I know I have a thought somewhere in my brain for vets, of course I know right where it is, but in the scenario where I'm not paying attention, I just start creating a new thought name. So a child thought underneath pets for my vets. I'm just going to type in the letter V and notice that the brain actually shows me all thoughts that currently exist that contain the letter V. I can even say VE. That's going to minimize the list even more. Product version 1, 2, 3. There's vertical markets vendor. There's vets. That's the thought I'm looking for. I'm going to double click or just double click on vets. And vets is now a child thought of pets. And of course, I can unlink that other unwanted relationship. So now vets falls under pets instead of falling under personal life. So another variation, another way that you can move a thought from one area of your brain to other. Granted, it was just one click away, but in a very large growing brain, you'll find sometimes you start to create a thought name and realize you created that thought already years ago in the past, and you can just link to that existing content. So let's go ahead and bring other vet or pet related information over. I don't think I have too much on this. Let's just scroll through really quickly. And I think that's it. Again, if I missed anything, I can come back at a later time. Now I'm seeing a lot of finance information. So let's create a thought for all of my finance. And this time I'm going to really do something a bit different. I'm going to use TheBrain's mass select feature. I'm going to start control clicking on thoughts. Now, if you work on a Mac OS, you can do this with a command click. But when I control click on a thought, I'll control click on banking. Notice that it adds banking to my selection box over on the left. I can control click on bonds, add that thought in. If I add a thought in on the selection box that I don't want to have there, notice if I move my mouse away, the thoughts that I've selected are being displayed with little marching ants, we call that, around the actual thought. So if I didn't want bonds there, I control click again to move thoughts in and out of the selection box. And of course, I can also control click on a gate. I've added everything connected as a child thought to personal life into my selection box. So keep those features in mind if you start utilizing these features, this control click or command click feature, that it doesn't necessarily need to be just on an individual thought. You can actually control click on a gate. I can also hold down the control key and drag a square around a group of thoughts to add those to the selection box as well. But in this scenario, I'm going to be a little meticulous, and I'm going to grab banking, bonds, finance is where they're going to be linked. And so I'll just scroll through my list. Insurance, medical, retirement planning. I've got a few thoughts there, stock, and upcoming expenses and bills. So I've meticulously selected individual thoughts, and I can go to finance, make that the current active thought. I'll right click, and there's a lot that you can do with this right click, and I'll show you a few more features in just a bit in today's demo. But for now, I right click and I add my selected thoughts as children of finance. But I'm not done yet. I'm not going to close my selection box. I'm going to go back to personal life and make that the active thought, then right click in the selection box and select unlink selection. So I've first linked those thoughts up to their new home, finance. Now I return to personal life and unlink. And I can reverse that as well. Let's just do that one more time. I actually won't even create the new thought first. The remaining thoughts that I have here are mostly, I believe, related to health and fitness. So I'll select all my health and fitness thoughts. Healthy eating, healthy living. Home renovations, that goes somewhere else. We'll get back to that. My recipes and restaurants. So now I've selected my thoughts that are related to health and fitness. I right click in the selection box, unlink from their current active thought. Now let's just take a moment to talk about what I just did. If I were to close this selection box right now, I will have just potentially created some orphan thoughts. I believe, I'm not sure what I have yet under my recipes. I do have content there. How about restaurants? Now restaurants, I'm just starting out with mapping out all of my favorite restaurants that I go to. I'm going to keep diligent track of this here in my brain. I might start writing a blog about it in the future. So I just created this thought. It has no other relationships. And I just unlinked it from its parent thought, which is my personal life. So it's floating out there on its own. We call that an orphan thought. So it would be very hard to find this thought. I could run a report to find orphan thoughts over on the right. In this scenario, I have it selected so I can easily access and navigate to this thought. I'll also still be able to search for it. I haven't deleted the thought. I've just unlinked it from everything in the brain. I'm going to return now to my personal life and create my new thought for health and fitness and activate this thought. And this is why I didn't close that selection box yet, is because I wanted to first create the thought. Notice even with the selection box open, I can still navigate through the brain without control clicking, create new thoughts, add new content, and just leave that selection box sitting open. And when I'm ready for health and fitness, I'll right click and I'm going to say link selected thoughts as children. So there they have a new home. I can now close my selection box. And that last little remaining thought, home renovations. This goes over to my hobbies. So I'm going to click and drag a link up to hobbies. And I did another little trick, my last little trick of navigating and moving thoughts through the brain. I simply held down the shift key when I was doing that drag and drop, that link. And the shift key will actually unlink a thought from its current parent thoughts and link it to that one singular thought that you just linked it to. And I'll show you that one more time. I'm going to create a new thought. Let's say I'm into vintage Zenith television. So I just tried to think of something really, really random, but maybe, hey, this is a new hobby of mine. Oh, I created it under personal life. I want to connect it to hobbies. Now, if I just drag a link over to hobbies without clicking the shift key, obviously it just adds that new link. I'm going to right click and unlink. This time I'm holding the shift key. So I click on shift, Zenith televisions over to hobbies, unlinks itself from personal life, and it has that one and only parent thought, hobbies. So that's if you're just moving and you want this new thought to have a singular parent thought, hold the shift key down. It's a great, great little shortcut within the brain. And now, finally, another component that I want to share with you. You noticed earlier I had a lot of great icons and maybe some color codes on a few different thoughts. I'll choose travel as my example now. Notice all of these have little buildings for urban travel and my palm tree for tropical vacations. Those are graphics that I've added on my own. It's just another nice way to really enhance and edit a brain to give visual identification to key thoughts. Travel, for example, is something that I'm looking into. I'm coming up with a 20-year anniversary for my wife and I, so we're going to find something really, really great to do. So I'm really kind of focused on travel, and anytime I go into my personal life thought or area of my brain, I want travel to stand out a bit. So I'm going to click on the link, or on the thought for travel rather, excuse me. I click on the thought that opens up the thought properties display. From here, I can add an icon. So I can click to select one of the brain's built-in icons, or even choose a file if I've got my own image to choose from, or capture an image that's on the screen. I'll see if I have time to demo this later. Capture image is great. It's really like a Snagit feature if you're familiar with Snagit. Click on capture image and you get some crosshairs on the screen and you can capture an image that you have open on your desktop, maybe on a web page or something that you want as an icon for a thought. In this case, I'll select a stock icon. This is for travel, so go into transportation, and I'll give this nice little plane icon. I like this guy. Doesn't stand out enough for me yet. I want to click on the thought and also change the color background. So a nice light red, and change the font to, oh, that was the color background. I'll switch over to the font, and let's make that just a blue. So it just simply stands out a bit. I haven't made a big change, a very subtle change to make that particular thought stand out. And you can think about this particularly in a business environment. If you've got a lot of documents going on with one project, but the key document that you're working on, your company presentation or your client proposal, is the one that really needs to stand out in a grouping of 20 or 30 important documents, simply give it an icon, change the color coding of that thought, and instantly that thought stands out in a group to become easily identifiable. And of course, you can customize it to something that you identify with. So you make the brain actually reflect your own business process or your own thinking. And then finally, I wanted to share with you before I leave this brain, I've really done a number on my personal life area. I've cleaned it up. Let's take a look at the original. Here I took a screenshot before I got started. This is what the original thought underneath personal life looked like. It was kind of a cluster. A lot was going on there. It was hard for me if I just needed to really quickly look up some financial information. Where is my account info? It's not under account. Is it under Wells Fargo? No. Oh, there it is, banking. So I would click on banking. Here, there's going to be no question. I'm not going to go to the health and fitness or hobbies or pets thought. I need to do some banking, some Wells Fargo. I click on finance. There it is right at the top. Less thoughts to sift through, and I can find what I'm looking through very, very easily. So let's share now a few more examples and ways that we can clean up areas that have become overgrown or need a little bit of attention. And for this, I'm actually going to jump into my business brain. Now, here I am under one of my clients, Time Warner. And again, I've done a good job of sort of putting things together. All of my active projects that I'm working on, easily accessible, a couple of key documents. My contacts are here in one area. I've got some database information that links and takes me over to databases. Another entirely different area of the brain where I've got a lot of data content, who's working on that data, etc. But under Time Warner, one of the projects that I'm working on is called Reach Out. And I didn't expect this particular thought to have this much content so quickly. So it sort of caught me off guard. The client really liked the original proposals. Things have taken off. We've had a lot of meetings. There's a lot of new research that I'm doing for this particular client on this project. So without me even realizing it, it started to get a little cluttered. And if I need to look up something really quickly, a meeting, let's see, April, there it is, March 2017 meeting notes. So I can click, open that file attachment, start going through those meeting notes. It just took a few seconds, but at the rate this is going, I'm going to have a lot of new content. And it's really time for me to start piling this information into groups that are easily identifiable. Now, I'm actually going to close my notes for this particular thought. The last brain, I didn't have a lot of content yet in the notes, so that was blank. I don't want that to become distracting. So another feature within the brain is we can very easily minimize our notes. So I just simply clicked on the little arrow icon. I'm focusing on the brain right now, and that moved the notes nicely out of the way for me so that I could easily access this information. And now let's go ahead and start categorizing. Well, already you can see that I'm using a thought type called manager. That's how I identify people working on this account. And that's really nice because it groups those people together in this cluster of children underneath the Reach Out ad campaign. But really, to make that stand out a bit further, I can simply move them up as jump thoughts. This is going to work really great. So I no longer have the people that are working on this account mixed in with all the documents and information and research and presentations. They stand out a little bit as jump thoughts. I can easily get to those thoughts if I need to look up Jana really quickly to take a few notes. She's got keeping track of all the old Time Warner stuff. I can see where she's working and what other departments she's working with and projects. Easily access those people working on this account. But still, all of my content, as it continues to grow, it's going to be more difficult to actually sift through this, or a little time consuming. Let's group those together as well. And let's go ahead and use thought types. There's a few benefits to using thought types to categorize information, and I'll share that with you now. So the first one I see is a presentation. This is my Winning Edge presentation, and I thought I had more presentations. Oh no, that's PDF. The icons look the same. There it is. So here's my other PowerPoint. Look at this, two opposite ends of this cluster of child thoughts. But those should be grouped together, shouldn't they? They're both presentations that I'm giving the client. So I'm simply going to Alt-click on the Winning Edge thought. Now I can click to activate the Winning Edge if I want, and then click again to open up this thought properties display. You can also Alt-click on a non-active thought. So a child thought, a jump thought, what have you. Opens up the thought property display, and I can assign the type of presentation. Now I look through my list here, and there it is. I've got my existing thought presentation. So I'll assign presentation to a Winning Edge. I've got that color coded. It stands out a little bit, and I'll do the same over here to the future of e-solutions. Notice I can also right click on a thought. I'll do that this way. right click and go to set thought type to presentations. And notice what the brain did for me. Oh, you've got two thoughts called that are the subject presentations, or the type, I should say, presentations. It puts those together for me here in the grouping of child thoughts. So that's fantastic. I've got all my presentations in one place. I didn't need to create that sub level, that subcategory. I just simply have them grouped together as presentations. Here's my next item. This is sort of a document associated with the account. I typically call these spec sheets. So once again, I'll alt click, and let's see if I've got spec sheets. I may actually already have all of these. No, I don't. So I don't have a spec sheet thought type. Let's go ahead and create one from scratch. Notice anytime I'm trying to assign a new thought, you'll see this again when I do the mask select. If I don't see the thought type that I'm looking for, I'll go ahead and just create a new type from scratch. So notice if I click on new type, it says, hey, you need to enter a new type name. That's fantastic. This will be called spec sheet. And we'll go ahead and create that new thought type. Now I can also click on the pencil icon. I see that Amazon server, I've got a document here that's all about building this Amazon server for this client, but I want to define what a spec sheet looks like. So I'm going to click on this pencil. You can go to any thought that has an existing thought type, or I could have also, let's just jump back really quickly, from my list here at the very top, I can go and see all of my thought types. And there's spec sheet. It doesn't have any icon. It's not color coded. I want to change that. I want all my spec sheets to stand out. So I can click here as well. That takes me to the spec sheet thought type thought. It's sort of like a virtual thought that doesn't appear in the brain as I'm navigating, but I can get to the thought type so that I can open up the properties window. And from here, I'll assign an icon. I'll once again use a stock icon from the brain. I'll go into business for this one. And here's a little pen and paper for spec sheet. No, I need something different. How about this nice little yellow file? That's a spec sheet. That looks great. I'll go ahead and leave these white text. That works fine for me. And I'll assign spec sheet to my April 2017 contract. Set thought type to spec sheet, as well as product comparisons that I'm doing. That's a spec for this project. Actually, I'll go ahead and do this. Control click. And control click March 2017. And let's see if there's anything else. The others are meeting notes. So, oh, there's my checklist. That's a spec sheet. So rather than right-clicking to add that spec sheet, I'll just control click, add them all here to my selection box. Now I'll do my right click and select that these all become the thought type of spec sheet. So groups those together with a nice icon as well. There's still more to go. Let's grab my meeting notes. Those are sort of peppered in here throughout the, I guess that's all I have, 3 meeting notes. Right click and set this thought type. Do I have meeting notes? Yes, I do. And now, once again, meeting notes, that has the white text. I already have something with white text. I want to modify that. So that's not a problem. I'll go this route to get into my meeting notes. And I'll just change meeting notes font to be a nice light blue to sort of stand out a little bit more. So that works great. And my final component are some research documents that I'm working on. So once again, just really quickly, select those thoughts, right click, and set that thought type up for research. Let's see if I already have a research. I do not, so I'll create a new one more time. New thought type research. And I can close my selection box and modify how all research thought types look. They've got the icon of, just give it sort of scientific looking layout there. I'll give them a background color, a nice light background color with some darker text. How does that look? So there are, that doesn't look good enough for me. I really want, so you can really play around with this and modify these a little bit until you get exactly what you're looking for. And of course, at any time you can come back and modify how you've set those changes up. And they appear universally throughout the brain. If there are any other thoughts now called research, those will also be modified with whatever color settings that you've set up. It's a universal change throughout the brain. Now, already you can see the benefit. And once again, I took a screenshot. Let me pull that onto the screen here. Sort of hard to find a spec sheet. If I had that checklist, list. There it is, checklist. Again, it takes a moment just to sort of look through all this text. And you can see it's much, much cleaner and easier to find. And when I mouse over, I even see that those thoughts are all checklists. Now, a couple other features that I want to share with you just really quickly before we open things up for Q&A is that there's other ways to modify thoughts as well and content that you're going into the brain. Quite often, I'm bringing a lot of web content into my brain, and my web content will always pick up the from the URL, from the web page, what it thinks, the brain thinks the thought name should be. Some of these I've modified. Now notice this particular thought. Let's bring back my content. And in the Brain 9, all of your content loads up right there in the content window. So it's loading these web pages up in the content window. Notice that this full tab, if you open this in any browser, Chrome, Opera, IE, doesn't matter, the full tab is going to be Nilton Clothing official page of the, and there I can see it down below, the Young Swiss Street Band. So that's actually what the original thought name was. And actually you notice that my original screenshot maybe even had that full thought name there. So what I simply did is, when I activate the Thoughts Properties display, there's a little button here that allows you to switch whatever you have as the label with the thought name back and forth. So rather than Nilton Clothing Official, I simply type in Nilton, or I can even say clothing site. I'm not so interested in what the actual URL or content is. I just want to show this design. It's got some interesting graphic layouts and neat symmetry within this website if you scroll down a little further. So I'm sharing that with the client. Is this something that they're interested in seeing? So I'm just going to rename it Clothing Site Great Graphics and switch that with what the brain originally named that thought from the URL, which is this long Nilton Clothing official page, blah, blah, blah. So again, I get the name that I want for that thought. I can mouse over to see the full label down below, but you can always go back and change those from time to time. If you're noticing you've got a lot of really long thought names, sometimes it's better to abbreviate that thought name, make it as short as possible, and leave that long description for the label that only appears when you mouse over that particular thought. That's always an option for you. And then finally, also a few other thoughts, a couple other web pages here that I actually found that I'm sharing with my actual client. Notice this page has some moving graphics that are appearing, and you probably can't hear it over the speaker, but I've got it way turned down. It's actually pretty loud when I turn it up. A lot of sound, a lot of interesting things happening on this web page. So I'm also going to take this design or this link to this one individual thought, and I'm going to link this up to a new thought called sound design. And this is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, is that if you're not doing this already with your brain, now is the time to start cross-referencing all of your information. Anything that this particular website or web page is related to. Sure, I'm going to be showing it to my client. Do they like this type of formatting? But now I'm also linking it up to sound design, and sound design is going to be linked to my research and development area. So I've got a couple of different research for demos. So I already have that thought in my brain. Sound design is now going to go up and be linked to research for demos. So it falls under multiple locations. Regardless of how I'm thinking about that thought, I can still always find what I'm looking for. So it's a great time to not only review your content, clean it up, but also start linking it to all the other pieces of information that it's connected to. And here's a great example right on my individual thought for reach out to Time Warner. I'm not only getting down to this thought from the Time Warner thought, I can navigate into this thought from the side, from the people that are working on the account. I can go through that research for demos, find that studio page and see that was used in a demo for one of my client. So all those cross-referencings that happen in your brain, it's always a great time to sit back and look at the larger structure of your information and see how it can fit together. And I think that wraps up everything that I wanted to cover today as far as the basics behind cleaning up your brain and clarifying all of that data for easier access and editing an ever-growing and evolving brain. If you do have time, please stay on for the question and answer panel where we'll go through a few questions that you've presented. If not, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to share features and details of the Brain application with everyone. And if you think of a question in the future, please feel free to reach out to us at support@thebrain.com. We're always happy to hear from you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your week and enjoy your brain.